Welcome to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries. Book: Very Good Lives, The Fringe Benefits of Failure and the Importance of Imagination by J.K. Rowling. Part 1 Summary, of 3 parts. Part 1. The Power of Failure, the Unseen Teacher. Let us begin at the very moment where so many of us find ourselves trembling, standing at the edge of our futures, staring into the unknown, and fearing that dreadful word, failure. When Rowling took the podium at Harvard University to deliver what would later become Very Good Lives, she was not merely speaking to graduates in crimson robes. No, she was addressing every human being who has ever fallen, faltered, or faced the weight of uncertainty. Her words cut through the polite applause and academic ceremony, piercing into the heart of what it means to live fully. She begins not as a triumphant icon, but as a once-broken soul. Before the fame, before Harry Potter enchanted the world, Rowling was a single mother living in poverty, believing herself to be the biggest failure she knew. Yet it is in this very confession that her voice gains its quiet thunder. For she insists that failure, far from being an end, is one of life's greatest teachers. The cleansing power of rock bottom. Rowling does not romanticize despair. She dismantles it, examines it, and shows how it can purify us. When all else was stripped away, security, reputation, certainty, she found the raw truth of who she was and what she valued. Failure, she says, became the solid foundation on which she rebuilt her life. Here lies the paradox that stirs the soul. Failure frees us. It burns away illusions, leaving only the essentials, the courage to pursue what truly matters. Many live their lives imprisoned by the fear of falling, but Rowling reminds us that only those who dare to fail greatly can ever achieve greatly. She confesses that if she had succeeded at anything else, if life had offered her an easier path, she might never have had the courage to write. Failure, in her story, was not a cruel punishment. It was a divine redirection, the map of the inner life. At the heart of her speech lies an even deeper question. Who are you, really, when the world falls silent? Rowling's answer emerges not from grandeur, but from grit. When we fail, we meet ourselves in the rawest form. We come face to face with our fears, our endurance, and our inner compass. It is there, in the ruins of lost plans, that character is forged. She does not preach resilience as a slogan. She embodies it as a truth tested in fire. Her journey reminds us that failure is not a verdict, it is a revelation. It strips us of pretense and forces us to choose. Do we surrender or do we rise? And rise she did, not because the world opened its doors to her, but because she kept knocking, manuscript after manuscript, rejection after rejection, until the door finally opened. The gift beneath the pain. In Very Good Lives, Rowling transforms personal pain into universal wisdom. She speaks with humility and wit, weaving her story not as a tale of triumph, but as an ode to persistence. Her failure, she says, became the crucible of her imagination, the birthplace of courage, empathy, and authenticity. Every shattered expectation, every lonely night became a brushstroke in the masterpiece of her life. And in sharing that truth, she gives us permission to embrace our own imperfections. She challenges us to ask not, what if I fail? But rather, what if failure is the path I need to walk to find my purpose? The moral of Part 1. As Part 1 closes, we stand with her on the other side of failure, changed, chastened, but awake. Rowling's message is not gentle, but it is kind. She urges us to stop running from our collapses and start learning from them. For in failure lies clarity, and in clarity lies power. She reminds us that a very good life is not one free of hardship, but one enriched by the wisdom hardship brings. The fringe benefits of failure are not given. They are earned in the quiet triumphs of endurance. So let us carry this first truth with reverence. Failure, when embraced with courage, becomes the sculptor of greatness. Part 2. The courage of imagination, seeing beyond yourself. There comes a moment, after the rubble of failure has settled, when the soul must choose what to build next. It is here, between despair and possibility, that J.K. Rowling invites us to discover the other great force that defines a very good life: imagination. But in Rowling's universe, imagination is not merely the playground of the artist or the writer. It is the heartbeat of humanity itself. It is the bridge between the known and the unseen, between self and others, between the life we live and the life we dream of creating. She declares with quiet conviction that imagination is our moral compass. It is what allows us to envision not only better worlds, but better selves, the power to step into another's story. Rowling's message soars beyond the realm of magic and fantasy. She speaks of a deeper kind of enchantment, the kind born of empathy, the kind that asks us to imagine ourselves in the skin of someone else. During her work at Amnesty International, Rowling witnessed the darkest shades of humanity, the cruelty inflicted by power, the silent suffering of the oppressed. Yet amidst the despair, she also saw acts of breathtaking courage, people who risked everything to speak truth, to defend the dignity of others. It was there, she says, that she discovered the true scope of imagination. For to imagine another person's pain and to act upon that imagination is the highest form of human intelligence. She urges us not to confine imagination to art or invention, but to let it become an act of compassion. Without imagination, she implies, we become prisoners of our own experience. To live without it is to live half-blind, to see the world only through the narrow lens of self. But when we dare to imagine, really imagine, we expand our emotional universe. We begin to see that every person, every struggle, every dream carries the same fragile hope we hold within ourselves. Imagination as resistance. Rowling's words ripple with quiet rebellion. In a world often obsessed with logic, metrics, and measurable success, she champions imagination as an act of defiance. To imagine a kinder world is to reject cynicism. To envision justice where there is cruelty is to declare that things can change. And to see potential in oneself after repeated failure is to refuse the verdict of despair. Her own life is living proof. The stories that made her a global icon were born not in comfort, but in constraint, in poverty, isolation, and uncertainty. Yet she held fast to her imagination, nurturing it like a candle in the storm. It was her imagination that gave the world a boy who lived, a castle of dreams, and a story that reminded millions that courage, friendship, and love conquer all. Rowling teaches us that imagination is not an escape from reality. It is the engine of transformation. It is what allows us to rebuild when life crumbles, to dream when all seems lost, and to love even when the world feels cold. The responsibility of the imaginative soul. With brilliance and humility, Rowling calls upon us to use our imagination, not merely for self-expression, but for service. To imagine well, she says, is to carry a certain responsibility, to use our gifts to lift others, to give voice to the voiceless, and to challenge the narratives that confine us. She speaks not as a celebrity or philosopher, but as a witness to the power of empathy. She warns that when we allow fear or indifference to close our hearts, we not only harm others, we diminish ourselves. The truly imaginative person does not hide behind fantasy. They build bridges with it. They are the architects of compassion, the quiet revolutionaries who see light where others see shadow. The moral of Part 2. As Part 2 unfolds, we begin to understand that the fringe benefits of failure and the power of imagination are not separate paths. They are two halves of the same whole. Failure grounds us in humility. Imagination lifts us in hope. Together, they form the wings of the soul, the strength to endure and the vision to transcend. Rowling's voice lingers in our minds like a spell of awakening. We do not need magic to transform our world. We carry all the power we need inside ourselves already. We have the power to imagine better. And that, she reminds us, is where greatness begins, not in the applause of achievement, but in the quiet courage to dream beyond the boundaries of the ordinary. Part 3. The Art of Living Well. Building a Life Worth Remembering. As the final pages of Very Good Lives unfold, J.K. Rowling's voice takes on the steady warmth of someone who has walked through fire and now stands on solid ground, not untouched by pain, but transformed by it. This last part of her address, her crescendo of wisdom, is not a victory speech. It is a benediction. It is a quiet, powerful reminder of what it truly means to live a very good life. For Rowling, the measure of a good life is not found in the trophies of success, the accolades of peers, or the glitter of recognition. No, it is found in something far deeper, in the unseen moral choices we make when no one is watching, in the lives we touch, and in the courage to live authentically, even when the world demands conformity. Success redefined, beyond the world's applause. Rowling invites us to redefine success, not as society defines it, but as we choose to define it. She confesses that her greatest achievements were not those that could be recorded in a resume or etched in a biography, but those born in silence. The resilience to stand again after failure, the resolve to write her truth when no one believed in her, the compassion that grew from imagining another's pain. In this final movement of her speech, she dismantles the illusion that a perfect life is a happy one. True fulfillment, she argues, comes from the willingness to live honestly, to align one's choices with one's values, even when the cost is high. A very good life, she implies, is not one of ease, but of integrity. It is not the one that avoids storms, but the one that dances in the rain, unashamed and unafraid. The courage to be vulnerable. Rowling does not mask her vulnerability. She sanctifies it. She reveals that to live fully is to risk heartbreak, to risk disappointment, to risk standing alone. But she insists this vulnerability is not weakness. It is strength of the purest kind. To persist when the world whispers, quit. In Rowling's world, the heroes are not those who never fall. They are those who rise again and again, guided by imagination and grounded in humility. The thread that binds: love, empathy, and purpose. By the final passage, Rowling's narrative reaches its quiet revelation. The essence of a good life is love. Love that expresses itself through empathy, imagination, and service. She beckons us to look beyond the mirror of self and to see the world as it could be. For what use is knowledge without kindness? What use is power without compassion? She reminds us that intellect may open doors, but empathy builds bridges. And so she urges her audience to become bridge builders, to use their education, their failures, and their imagination not as shields, but as gifts, to let their influence ripple outward in acts of mercy, justice, and understanding. The true legacy of a life, she says, lies not in what we acquire, but in what we inspire. The gift of freedom. As her words draw to a close, Rowling circles back to the beginning, to that trembling moment of failure, to the fear that once held her hostage. And she reveals the final secret. Failure and imagination, when embraced, deliver a third, luminous gift. Freedom. Freedom from the tyranny of fear. Freedom from the need to impress. Freedom to live truthfully, to create boldly, to give generously. When we stop fearing failure and start using our imagination to see beyond our limits, we become unstoppable, not in arrogance, but in authenticity. She stands before us as proof of that truth. A woman who failed spectacularly, dreamed wildly, and gave the world not only a story, but a reason to believe in their own. The moral of Part 3. And so, in her closing reflection, J.K. Rowling leaves us not with advice, but with an invocation. As is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. A very good life is not measured in milestones, but in meaning. It is not about reaching perfection, but about reaching others. It is about daring to fail, daring to dream, and daring to live with imagination, love, and integrity. The final benediction. So, here. As her words fade into the air like the last note of a symphony, we are left with a truth that glows softly in the heart. That life, in all its chaos and uncertainty, is still an extraordinary gift. That failure refines us. That imagination redeems us. And that together, they lead us to the only kind of success that truly matters. A life lived fully, bravely, and well. 3 key insights and takeaways from the book. Takeaway 1. Failure is not the end. It is the beginning of self-discovery. Rowling's first great lesson is that failure is not a verdict. It is a revelation. When her life fell apart, when her marriage ended, when poverty and despair seemed to close in, she discovered something profoundly liberating. That rock bottom became the firm foundation upon which she rebuilt her life. Failure stripped away the non-essentials. It forced her to confront what truly mattered: her courage, her passion, her calling as a writer. Through failure, she found freedom from the expectations of others and the false security of success. Had I really succeeded in anything else, she admits, I might never have found the determination to succeed in the one thing I believed I was meant to do. This truth reverberates for anyone standing amid disappointment. Failure, when embraced with courage, reveals your essence. It teaches resilience, humility, and authenticity. It purifies ambition into purpose. The deeper lesson: do not fear failure. Fear instead a life so safe that it leaves your soul untested. For it is only in falling that we learn how to rise, and in rising we discover who we truly are. Takeaway 2. Imagination is the bridge to empathy and transformation. Rowling's second insight elevates imagination beyond creativity. It becomes a moral power. Through her time at Amnesty International, she witnessed both the depths of human cruelty and the soaring courage of those who resisted it. From these experiences, she learned that imagination is the seed of empathy. To imagine yourself in another's position, to feel their pain, fear, or hope, is to awaken your humanity. Imagination allows us to see beyond the walls of self-interest, beyond the small circle of our own experience. It turns understanding into compassion, and compassion into action. Unlike any other creature on this planet, she says, humans can learn and understand without having experienced. They can think themselves into other people's places. In a world that often rewards intellect but neglects empathy, Rowling's words are a clarion call. Use your imagination not merely to create, but to care. The deeper lesson: imagination is not an escape from reality. It is the tool by which we change it. When we dare to imagine better, we begin to build it. Takeaway 3. True success is living authentically and serving others. The final and most enduring insight of Very Good Lives is Rowling's redefinition of success. She reminds us that the truest success is not found in status, fame, or wealth, but in the quiet integrity of living aligned with your deepest values. A very good life, she says, is one marked by authenticity, empathy, and courage. It is measured not by how much we earn, but by how much we give. Not by how many admire us, but by how many we uplift. Not by the perfection of our journey, but by the meaning we bring to it. Life is difficult, complicated, and beyond anyone's control, Rowling declares, and the humility to know that will enable you to survive its vicissitudes. She calls upon us to live with imagination, to stand firm in failure, and to choose kindness over comfort. These are not easy choices, but they are the choices that create a life worth remembering. The deeper lesson: success is not about avoiding pain. It's about growing through it. It's about becoming a source of light for others, even when your own path is dim. Closing reflection. J.K. Rowling's Very Good Lives is not just a commencement address. It is a manifesto for the human spirit. It teaches us that failure is not our foe, but our forger. Imagination is not fantasy, but empathy in motion. And success is not applause, but alignment, with purpose, with love, and with truth. A very good life, she shows us, is not about living without struggle. It's about finding meaning within it. Thanks for listening to Book Buzz Reviews and Summaries.